Hello, it's Judith here. And today and next week, I'm going to be talking about difficult relationships. And we can have difficult relationships with all sorts of people, family members, friends, work colleagues. And they can be in the past, so apparently over and done with, but often not dealt with. Or they can be current. And that's how I've split the videos up. So today I'm going to be talking about difficult relationships that are in the past, where we're no longer involved with the person or people, or they are no longer with us. And obviously these can be things that happen in childhood, so your relationship with your parents, or more particularly their relationship with you. They can be friendships, particularly from your adolescence, or they can be relationships with a partner that have come to an end fairly unpleasantly, where the relationship itself was very difficult. It's not true in every case, but it is true in the majority of cases, is that the damage that is done is to somebody's feelings of self-worth. Whatever the relationship has been, it has made the client who's sitting in front of me feel they're never going to make anything of themselves. They're totally unworthy. They're, never going to achieve anything. And that can be done by parents, by friends, and by partners. And it's done for different reasons, for the different levels. But the important thing is the impact, which stays. Even if the relationship is 50 years old, it's still there if it hasn't been dealt with, and it's still driving that person's life. If you feel unworthy, if you feel you are not of any value, then that's going to have a huge, huge effect on your life. The problem with the relationships in childhood, so normally relationships with parents, could be grandparents, can sometimes be friends, is that you were being exposed to whatever was happening at a time when you didn't have the emotional maturity to deal with it. So you had no means of processing it or handling it in any way. And that is what it just gets stuck somewhere in your head, in your subconscious mind, and often in your body as well, the effect of the trauma. I find people often very resistant to the use of the word abuse. They see abuse as sexual or physical. I was beaten or physically punished. Actually, emotional abuse is as bad, if not worse, and can have longer term effects and is less likely to be dealt with at an earlier stage. So how do I approach it? I generally start with something fairly general, but before I get into treatment, what tends to happen is we may have had a bit of a conversation on the phone about it, but it'll often come out in the first session. And sometimes the first session is just the client in front of me talking about what has happened to them. And that in itself is therapeutic, because it may well be, I get told frequently that, I have never said some of this to another human being. And keeping all of that stuff inside and not talking about it is damaging in itself. The other damage is coming from the fact that if you have been abused in that way, and you've not worked on it, then it's there still damaging you. I find when people are talking to me, they can recall incidents from years and years ago as if they were yesterday. They're still very vivid and very strong. And therefore, if you like, those voices are still in their head saying, no, you're no good, you're worthless, you're of no value at all. And it may be that these things have actually been said to them, or it may be that neglect has led them to believe they weren't of any value, because the people who should have loved them unconditionally were fairly neglectful. And often the parents were behaving in what they thought was the best way for bringing up a child. Often they weren't. They were copying what was done to them. Anyway, back to what I do. So after we've had the conversation, or the the talking bit where I'm mostly doing the listening, asking the odd question. It doesn't always come out like that. Sometimes it merges. People come to me for something completely different, and it's only once they start talking that I realise, and then they realise that this maybe is what is behind the thing they've actually thought they've come to see me for. So having done the talking, whenever it happens, however it happens, I would then move, first of all, into a fairly gentle approach, which is using story or metaphor in hypnosis to effectively declutter. Get rid of all that stuff that's hanging around in their, mainly in their subconscious mind, that is not only the stuff that did damage in the first place, but is still damaging them when it is recalled into their conscious minds. And it's just a question of getting rid of it, and starting to make suggestions about being a very different person to the one that you were made to feel you were and would always be. That may be enough for some people. It's quite an effective approach, I've found, and a very acceptable approach. If it's not, there are other things that we can do. So we can actually use NLP timeline approach to actually go back to when all of this first started. And this is particularly effective with childhood problems, that you just go back. You can go back and parent yourself as a child. And that, again, is very, very effective. So usually, both approaches work together, and there are other things in the tool bag if we've still got some residual stuff to deal with. So that's what I do. It seems awful to say I enjoy working with these clients. I enjoy it because I know I can make a difference, and I know how important that difference will be. When I was doing my NLP training, I can remember thinking at one point, having seen lots of demonstrations and worked with lots of people on childhood or other relationship issues, thinking, my goodness, I'd have never had children if I realised how much damage you can do quite innocently. And obviously, in some cases, it's not quite so innocent, but even, a well-intentioned parent can easily do damage. So it's quite scary being a parent. It was too late by then. I'd already done it and made the mistakes. Okay then, so that's it for today. Past damage can be healed is the message I want to leave you with, and it can be relatively gentle, and it doesn't involve continually talking about it. Yes, talking is important, and I do encourage it, but we don't have to go over and over it again. Once we've got the issue out in the open, and it's often as much the individual accepting that it was as bad as it was. We tend, particularly again with stuff that happened as a child, you almost feel as if you are criticizing or damning your parents because of what you're talking about, and it's hard to do. So it's often me that introduces the word abuse into the conversation, and it's often not well received, but emotional abuse is particularly difficult to recover from. So it's interesting that I put this in difficult relationships, because it obviously was a difficult relationship, although the person who should have been managing the relationship is not the person I'm dealing with, but the effect is, for that reason, so much greater. Next time I will talk about current relationships and how we can manage those, because they're still active and can be immensely painful. But that's for next time. Okay, that's it for now. If you If any of this rings true for you, then please, please, please just get in touch with me. You're not making any commitment. You're just coming and talking to me, and you can decide, having spoken to me, whether I'm the right person for you to work with and what I do is going to be helpful for you. So, yeah, you can book a half-hour session with me on the link, and it's a half hour or as long as it takes. I always allow a contingency around that because it can take an hour with these very difficult situations. So don't carry on being damaged. And if I'm not right, then find somebody who is, please. Okay. Take care, and I will see you next week for the next one.